This is Mac OS Ken.
iPhones versus smartphones, something like peace offerings from Apple to developers, and Apple may have been taken by a scary scam. It is Thursday, the 31st of March, 2022. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Kanji, device management for your Apple environment. Learn more at kanji.io/macOSKen. This show is also sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. You take care of your car, your home, your family. What about you? Your mental health and well-being? It's easier than it used to be with BetterHelp. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anybody on camera if you don't want to. My last therapist and I would talk on the phone sometimes, but he was also great about checking in by text, just to see how things were going. That was pretty great. It's much more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp Online Therapy. Like I said before, this show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Mac OS Ken listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/macOSKen. BETTERHELP. That's betterhelp.com/macOSKen. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/macOSKen. And thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring today's show. Conflicting stories on smartphones midweek. One specific to iPhone and one about smartphones in general. On the iPhone-specific side, CNBC had analysts with Bank of America balking at talk of reduced orders for iPhone SE. Nikkei ran a report earlier this week saying that Apple had reduced orders for its most budget-friendly phone due to a lack of demand. That report's sentiment was seconded by TF International analyst Ming-Chi Kuo. But B of A is not buying it. CNBC has the bank's analyst saying in a note, while these articles might lead some investors to think there is risk to demand, we believe demand for iPhones remains strong based on our analysis of iPhone trade-in prices. The firm points out that trade-in prices went down after the launch of iPhone SE. Max trade-in for an iPhone 12 Pro before the SE release was $700. Post-release, that max dropped down to $650. CNBC has the analyst arguing that this shows demand is still strong since Apple doesn't need to pay as much to convince people to trade in older iPhones for new models. Also, a B of A global survey from January showed 25% of respondents rocking an iPhone 8 or earlier. Quoting their note again, we see this as an opportunity for driving a replacement cycle. Apple could be targeting to upgrade these users to a newer iPhone, which could be a reason Apple still accepts the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus models for trade-in in China, but not in the US and UK. Bank of America has a buy rating on Apple shares. The firm's price target on the shares is $215. When the Nikkei story hit earlier this week, I wondered whether concerns over inflation and war may weigh more than a new iPhone right now. A piece from Mac Rumors supposes something similar, thanks to comments from TSMC chairman Mark Liu. The piece has Mr. Liu indicating that demand for consumer electronics like smartphones and PCs is slowing due to continued geopolitical uncertainties and new COVID-related lockdowns in China. Speaking at the Taiwan Semiconductor Industry Association, Apple's chip partner also warned about the rising cost to chip makers, a pressure that could eventually be passed on to consumers. News of something like peace offerings from Apple to developers. Starting in the Netherlands, earlier this week we heard something hopeful from regulators in Holland around their ongoing fight with Apple. Since the tail end of last year, Dutch authorities have insisted that Apple make it possible for dating apps in the App Store in the Netherlands to employ third-party payment solutions rather than being bound to Apple's in-app payment mechanism. Apple submitted a proposal in February that was rejected by the Netherlands Authority for Consumers and Markets. One of the biggest gripes was Apple's requirement that to make third-party payments work for apps in the Dutch App Store, developers would need a separate version of their app specifically for that store. Now, Apple has dropped that condition. According to a piece from Apple Insider, Apple no longer requires Dutch developers to submit separate binaries for dating apps using external payment methods, but the feature is still limited to the Netherlands. One assumes that this was the change referred to by Dutch authorities earlier this week. The week started with regulators saying in a statement that they welcomed Apple's latest concession and that the adjusted proposal should result in definitive conditions for dating app providers that wish to use the App Store. That said, sounds like there's still a bit more to hammer out, including Apple providing more specific criteria to evaluate non-Apple payment service providers that developers may use. Going more global, Apple seems to be making business easier for reader apps. Calm down, Anti-Poindexter. We don't mean you have to actually read necessarily. As a piece from TechCrunch explains, reader apps are apps designed primarily to provide access to some sort of digital content like magazines, books, audio, music, or video. The piece says Apple let developers know Wednesday that they will be able to link to an external website where users can create or manage their accounts with the app developer. Peace in our time? Maybe, but it's still kind of a pain in the backside. The Netflixes and Spotifys of the world can't just hit the links. Rather, TechCrunch says Apple instructs developers to apply for something it calls the external link account entitlement in order to provide this functionality in their own apps. An entitlement is something Apple uses when it wants to still have control over the situation in terms of which developers can implement a certain feature, the piece says. That is, instead of just changing the App Store rules so this type of behavior is broadly permitted for apps in the supported category, the entitlement process requires developers to ask and then receive approval for this special use case. This way, Apple can very carefully vet the apps being allowed to add the links. Plenty more rules where those came from. It's not nothing, though. It's not likely to make everybody happy. Because seriously, these days, what does? More news in a moment, but first a word from Kanji, device management for your Apple environment. We've heard for years that businesses that run Apple hardware have less trouble with IT. But getting new hardware up and running and keeping it in line can still be a pain. Not with Kanji. You know what apps need to be on hardware for your different divisions. So does Kanji, thanks to Blueprints. Blueprints let you easily assign the right apps, security controls, and automations to each device based on team, department, or location. Works great for education environments as well. Kanji can help you keep things organized so you spend less time managing devices and more time helping people. And of course, Kanji keeps the blueprint. If an app is uninstalled or a setting gets changed, the Kanji agent detects it and fixes it, saving you time and trouble. Go to kanji.io/macOScan for a free demo and trial. KANDJI. That's kanji.io/macOSKen. Find out why companies like Allbirds, Segment, Lacework, and others use Kanji for zero-touch Apple device management. KANDJI again, that is kanji.io/macOSKen. Your free demo and trial are waiting at kanji.io/macOSKen. As days go, the 11 experience by Apple shares weren't bad. A piece from MarketWatch says ticker symbol AAPL rallied nearly 19% over their 11-session winning streak, increasing valuation by $462 billion. It was the longest streak for Apple shares since their 12-session streak in 2003, and it's over. Apple shares lost 2/3 of a percentage point on Wednesday, ending the day down $1.19, closing at $177.77. Interesting, not important. Krebs on Security ran an in-depth piece on a scary new scam this week that's seeing ne'er-do-wells get info from big companies by pretending to be law enforcement. It's kind of convoluted, but stick with me. If law enforcement wants info on an individual or group, it needs a court order. But, and don't you love to hear that, Krebs says in certain circumstances, such as a case involving imminent harm or death, an investigating authority may make what's known as an emergency data request, or EDR, which largely bypasses any official review and does not require the requester to supply any court-approved documents. It seems that hackers have compromised email accounts and websites tied to police departments and government agencies and have started serving these EDR requests. Since there is no quick and easy way for a company that receives one of these EDRs to know whether it's legit, and since time is thought to be of the essence, seems the information's just kind of being handed over. Why bring this up here? Because Apple may have been one of the companies giving up info for fake EDRs. Bloomberg has 3 secret sources saying that Apple and Facebook have fallen prey to these scams. The piece says the 2 companies provided basic subscriber details, such as a customer's address, phone number, and IP address. Bloomberg says the information obtained by the hackers using the forged legal request has been used to enable harassment campaigns, according to one of the people familiar with the inquiry. The 3 people said it may be primarily used to facilitate financial fraud schemes. By knowing the victim's information, the hackers could use it to assist in attempting to bypass account security. Apple seems to have declined to comment, choosing instead to point Bloomberg toward a section of its law enforcement guidelines. The report says the guidelines referenced by Apple say that a supervisor for the government or law enforcement agent who submitted the request may be contacted and asked to confirm to Apple that the emergency request was legitimate. Those are words, but I'm not sure they're really an answer. For its part, Facebook said, "We review every data request for legal sufficiency and use advanced systems and processes to validate law enforcement requests and detect abuse. We block known compromised accounts from making requests and work with law enforcement to respond to incidents involving suspected fraudulent requests, as we have done in this case." Those are also words, the last 7 of which seem to have Facebook saying, "Yeah, we got fooled." Can't really blame either company, or any company that gets duped. As Krebs on Security points out, there are tens of thousands of police jurisdictions around the world, including roughly 18,000 in the U.S. alone, and all it takes for hackers to succeed is illicit access to a single police email account. Hey, maybe we should rethink the whole EDR thing. I know, you're the doctor, I'm the patient. I really thought we could be done with awards season for 4 to 6 weeks. Silly me. The Mac Observer says actors and titles from Apple TV Plus have been nominated for a total of 8 BAFTA TV awards. I know you think those happened already, but those were the BAFTA Film Awards. Nominated on the TV side, Foundation's Leah Harvey for Best Supporting Actress. 9/11 Inside the President's War Room is up for 2 awards. Single Documentary and Best Editing, Factual. Earth at Night in Color gets a nomination for Special Visual and Graphics Effects. Earth at Night in Color goes up against another Apple TV Plus series, Tiny World, for Photograph, Factual. And going for the hat trick, Earth at Night in Color is up for a Sound Factual Award, facing off against another Apple TV Plus title, 1971, the year that music changed everything. Most of those awards are craft awards and will be handed out on the 22nd of April. The Single Documentary and Actor Awards will be announced at the less technical ceremony on the 8th of May. And finally today, the U.S. is getting another chance to see CODA on the big screen. MarketWatch says Apple plans to put this year's Oscar winner for Best Picture in more than 600 theaters across the states for a limited release. Lots of potential community building around the showings. First, the piece says CODA will have open captions so that it is accessible to the deaf community and people who are hard of hearing. Also, it is playing where it was played out. MarketWatch says one theater participating in the run is Gloucester Cinema, located in Gloucester, Massachusetts, where CODA was largely filmed. The theater announced on its Facebook page earlier in the week that the film would be playing there for 1 week only, starting Friday, though it posted an update Wednesday saying that it plans to extend showings by another week as sales have been so strong. Commenting on the re-release, Erica Anderson, a member of Apple's film distribution team, said, "As our industry recognizes CODA with its highest honor, we're excited once again to bring this moving film to theaters so that audiences can share in the experience of watching it together." macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/macOSKen. This show is also sponsored by Kanji, device management for your Apple environment. Learn more at kanji.io/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.